with the month is really that it's always about me. It's never about the other. It's always my lesson. And if I take back everything I'm perceiving into the other, in the other, everything I'm projecting out, then it sets me free. Because I'm not scattered everywhere. I just like, oh no, this is not like, when I try to be right, it's just hell. But when I realize that whatever the other is going through in his mind, whatever he's thinking, whatever he's doing, what I want to see is what will confirm my belief about myself. So I'm projecting something on the other that is not true, or that is not about him, it's about me. So I'm never really seeing the other naked, like new, fresh. I'm always seeing it with my past learning, my past association, my past wounds or hurts, and that's what I'm projecting. And when I get that, I just have to take back everything I see, and suddenly, like, really, it's just happened like that. The other is just like changing, and it's like, oh my God, what's happening here? It's like, it's not the same anymore. And this is really what I've been learning with Eric, is that when I had a lot of stuff coming up and that it was really intense, at first he was trying to help me a lot, and it was not helpful at all. Because he was trying, in wanting to help me, he was first fixing the problem. So then I was having a problem, I had to improve myself, I had to go through the problem and starting to be better. And it was just reinforcing that I wasn't good enough, I wasn't worthy enough, I wasn't getting it, I was inferior to him, and blah, blah, blah. And the list is really long if we want to. But when we really just like kind of got through that together, what we came to was that he was holding the presence and just being there as a symbol of the Holy Spirit, as if he was just that presence for me, and saying nothing. I was just sharing all my stuff, and even if it was projection, because at the time I was so angry that it was just what I could do, and I wasn't trying to be perfect, in that way at least. I was just like allowing myself to just let it all out, because sometimes it was so intense that it was the only thing I could do. And then he was just holding the presence, and then I was quieting inside, just by the presence and just by allowing myself to let all that anger also coming up and not trying to repress it or trying to be a good girl, a good wife, a good whatever. It was just, I cannot hold that back anymore. And that presence was really quieting it. And then it was just for me to, okay, now this is my work. And it was just about seeing, okay, what am I seeing here that is not true? Because if I'm upset, I must see something that is not true. And I realized that I was always wrong. I've been so much jealous, and I was just having all the thoughts in my mind. He must be certainly thinking that and doing that and blah, 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 blah. And it was never true, because I was checking with him, and whatever he could say at first, I was never believing anyway. But when I started really to look at my belief, what it means about me, when I think that about him, what does it mean about me? And it was just like, oh, okay, it means that I am unworthy, that I'm not lovable, that I am a piece of shit, that I'm not good enough, that I'm just, and that's it. And it was like, mainly I had maybe 5 or 6 deep core beliefs that were there, and everything was just turning around that. And every time I was upset, it was just coming to one of those. Every time.
And you said you checked it out with him. That's
no, with me.
You said you asked him.
Yeah, sometimes I was like, okay, I need to ask you what is going on in your mind, because mine is like crazy, so help me. Like, what is going on? And he was telling. But then I was, this is not true, I don't believe you, because I'm feeling that. And so sometimes it's really not helpful, and you learn also sometimes to not answering me. Because the ego wants to have something to grasp on and to say, you see, it's you, I told you I was right. And it's like, just no. But it has been very helpful also for me, that he could be open to answer the question, and that I could check in my mind and see that I was wrong. And really being able to listen and to hear that I was wrong, which was a huge thing for for me. I never liked to be wrong. It was just awful. The first time that I really realized that I was wrong, it took me hours to go through that. It was hell, really hell. And now it's like, okay, I'm wrong, I'm just wrong, I'm wrong. And it's just so freeing, because that's really how the truth can be revealed. Every time I assume that I know something and that I want to be right, it's just already, no way, you cannot do anything about that. But when you can assume that I don't know, I must be wrong, otherwise I would feel peaceful, and then there's something that can be shared there. But really holding the space and having that taking back, and what is my belief about myself that I'm trying to confirm, and really giving that over to the Spirit. Okay, Spirit, now this is for you, I give it that over and heal my mind. That's all what I want. And really always coming back to purpose also during the upset, like sometimes it's just, what is the purpose of the relationship, of every encounter? Oh yeah, healing my mind. So what am I doing here being upset? Okay, I'm wrong. And just like looking and giving it over, forgiving. And sometimes it takes like weeks or months with the same one that just comes back. And it's just like so deeply rooted that it has to be forgiven over and over again. But yeah, this is really worth it.
Thank
So
you.
do you ever get pissed at him? Do you ever yell at him?
Sorry?
Do you ever yell at him?
Oh yeah, I did a lot. Yeah. Yeah.
I think too, it's like when two people seem to get into a fight or an argument, and the emotions escalate in intensity. You know, people will say, "What do you do at that point?" That was like the original question. It's very much like school teachers who have a group of children or young children, and then all of a sudden it's like a fight breaks out. It could be yelling, screaming, pulling hair, or whatever. And basically, teachers know that all that they can really do when the fight is escalated, you know, it's gone beyond just kind of soft emotions to really intense emotions. They call it time out. They actually have to take the children and say, all right, time out, and then you go over, you separate them initially, and in one sense, that's the most practical thing that you can do when it's already escalated to that point. Now, of course, the miracle is a mind training system that's saying, even when you feel slightly annoyed or slightly irritated, that is just a thin veil drawn over intense fury and rage. So you can see how tricky the mind is and how tricky the ego is, that it's just giving a mild version of it, but really upset is upset. You're not feeling peaceful when you're annoyed, and you're not feeling peaceful when you're irritated at all. And that's part of the ego's trick. It can minimize things. It can dilute things. It wants you to keep the guilt, the fear, the anger, the pain, the rage, everything. It wants you to stay irritated and annoyed, and then to tell yourself, well, it's not so bad. I'm not really that upset. I'm not at peace, but I'm not that upset. You see how the ego tries to even make something good out of irritation and annoyance. Even though they don't feel good, it tries to say, oh, you're doing okay. There's a lot of people that are doing a lot worse than you. You're just irritated and annoyed, and then you explode every once in a while, but you do a good job of keeping its stuff down under. And Jesus is saying, no, that's not going to work. So as you advance with the mind training, certainly in like living in communal situations, it's a lot of mirroring that goes on. It's very intense. I wouldn't recommend it unless you really were called into that, for that kind of a setting. But also, since I've traveled around the world so much and I've stayed with so many people, you realize that you know, the whole world is your community when you're doing that, and you can't just look around and say, I'm going to run back to my house with my like-minded individuals. You have to really do what Armel was just sharing. You have to bring it back, and what Helen was sharing. You have to really practice at bringing it back to your own mind with whoever you're meeting, wherever you're at, whether it's traffic, or you're in the jungle here, or you're staying with some friends, or whatever. And the more you practice it, it's kind of like an art. you know, where you start to really practice it and get better at letting it go.
Yeah, this is really cool, because when you're coming together and you have the same purpose, you have the same purpose of forgiveness. You join with your mighty companions. It says in the Course, like, you will actually have a phase where you will gather your mighty companions, and they will go along with you. You won't go along from here on onwards. And with them, they can join with you, just like Armel said, with that space in the mind of just, you know, yourself, like, just, okay, you know, am I reacting here? And just, if you get, you know, projection put onto you, you just have to, okay, what's my purpose here? And it's just, okay, this is my own forgiveness here. I need to watch this and just allow it to come up. If I'm having any reactions myself, okay, perfect, then it's something that I need to forgive, you know? So it's just this just really that is so beautifully used. And just be faced with that too, like with this spaciousness, you know, when you have something arising and it's not a reply on it, you just get embraced in this love. And you can just go through the darkest of the darkest with that, and that's necessary. It all needs to come up, to be brought up to the light, and to be helped with that, of course, like having that spaciousness just surrounded, you know, so that you really can bring it back to your own mind, and that you really, you know, don't stop there either, like I said before, but actually bring it up to the Holy Spirit, and it's like, this is your job, or love, or divine, or, you know, whatever you want to call it, but it's just like, this is your job. I can't possibly do this by myself, now you help me. And it's like this embrace, it's so important, because it gets so intense. The ego just wants you dead. That's its goal.
It's,
Can you say a little bit more about the point, how to discern when it's time to share a private thought, or when it's time to, I mean, you're always doing the work yourself, but there's a point where you kind of, I want something about the point of discernment when you actually go and you actually need to say something to someone versus just doing the work by yourself.
Yeah, it's that point of discernment. I think it really comes down to what I would call invitation. So, for example, if you're working like in psychotherapy, and there's an invitation to talk about things, to let things come up and talk about them. If you're doing it with a friend, and there's an invitation. If you're in it seems to be like a teacher-student relationship, and there's an invitation. That is so important. In other words, you're not really to use people just in general and at random to try out your private thoughts and see how that works, because they will generally react like in a very sharp way. Like there's kind of a general agreement, like everybody's supposed to act nice, and everybody tries to the extent that they can, but then this like bubbling, churning, fermenting darkness that's under the surface is there, ready to just pop out at any point, any frustration point. But the discernment is really more based on the invitation. So when you have holy relationship, or when you're opening to that, when you're working in a community where that's the goal, then there's an invitation to do that. And even then, usually we have what we call expression sessions, where people, like at the monastery for lunchtime, people don't just eat in silence, they will start to talk and express what's been going on for them during the morning. And that starts a whole new pattern. If you can start to express and talk through things with people that are there to listen, not to judge and everything, you feel there's a loosening, a softening. It's almost like letting steam off in a very helpful way, where there's not a sense of an accelerating response and reaction and judgment. And it just encourages you to do that. And so we've had expression sessions there at the monastery, and pretty much these gatherings I've been doing for years, it's like inviting people to share what their questions are, what their concerns, to share what their private thoughts are. There's an invitation for that, and in a presence that let's go into it together, let's see what's underneath, that's really dictating that, that's forcing that, and that helps to ease through it. And also with one-on-ones, if you feel a safe, like even a one-on-one or a diet situation where there's a safety there, and you know you're not going to be criticized or judged for what you're sharing, then it's much easier to let it up. And it's also very healing to let it up and to see that there's a presence of love there, that you're still loved and accepted. And that's showing that the thought isn't a real thought. So occasionally when I do retreats or gatherings, I will save some time to do like one-on-ones, and then people will reveal their dark secrets. It's like a one-on-one session with me is like a permission to get into all the dark, dirty secrets, the secrets that you've never told anybody, this and this and this, go through it and walk out and go, so much better getting that load off.
That's it, I killed a man.
That's right, but all this stuff, it doesn't really matter, but that's part of what heals. That's why the presence of love is so healing. Yes?
Very much related to that. So you have this intimate depth with your partner, as you're demonstrating today. But let's say you haven't experienced the depth of that yet, and you're working towards it, like you're one of us out here in the audience. And so there would be points, I would imagine, where something comes up with you and your partner that maybe wouldn't be appropriate to let it rip. Like maybe you need to go to somebody else, to a teacher or something like that, right? I mean,
yes.
And so I guess two-part question would be, how would you know when that's an issue? And then the other thing is, I do a little bit of work myself as a coach and as a healer of sorts, that I'm questioning the whole, why am I doing this? But sometimes I go into a depth with this work where I wonder, you meet people's shadows, and you meet things that sometimes you question whether this is appropriate for me to engage. In other words, mental illness or whatever, mine or theirs, or projected or whatever. So I guess again, it's just like points of discernment that I'm asking about.
Yeah, that discernment is definitely a lifelong process.
Yeah.
And we just keep taking little steps at a time and trying not to overstep anything or get ourselves into something where we feel like, oh, I've gotten into something that's just too far, it's too much, it's too intense, and I need to back off, I need to come back a little bit. And as you do the mind training, or working with the Course, or whatever spiritual path you're using, you gain more and more confidence, and the more your trust level grows in your connection with Spirit, the more confidence you gain in your connection with Spirit, the discernment goes up, and then more and more it's a huge discernment of when to say something or not to say something. Sometimes when only a smile or a hug or a pat on the back is the most that you can offer. That any word that you would offer would just inflame the situation. Eric and Armel talked a lot about those in the early times of your relationship, where it would be just a word, just one word would inflame the situation, and really no response or a silent acceptance was the best response, absolutely the most that could be offered. Also you get more and more of a sense that, in one sense, that you're talking to yourself, that you're teaching yourself, you start to pay more and more closer attention to those nuances in your own awareness, which none of us were trained to do. We were so other-oriented, so codependent, so sensitized about the world and the environment, that once we start working with the Course in Miracles, it's really even more, we become more sensitized to these things. It seems like we are overwhelmed with the task at hand. Like, oh my God, how can I change my mind to that extent? We've tried behavior modification, and as difficult as behavior modification can be, to modify your thinking and your belief system is much, much more than that. It's like it makes behavior modification look easy in comparison. So it's important to be really gentle with yourself and kind of like be very present and attentive, and even when you accept invitations or somebody says, hey, can you help me out with this and that, to really be within yourself about, take a moment to really feel out what intuitively feels right, which could be speaking to somebody else, sending them to speak to somebody that knows how to handle it. I remember years ago I was doing a number of Course in Miracles groups in Cincinnati, and this one group was a very small group in this shop called Whatever Works Wellness Center, where they had all these different techniques from, Chicken Soup for the Soul, and Bernie Siegel of Medicine and Miracles, and Course in Miracles, and flowers, and gift cards, and it was called Whatever Works Wellness Center. And I would go in there and facilitate a Course in Miracles group once a week. It was a small group, and one time I was called by the owners, and they said that a young man, a teenager, maybe 18-year-old, had come in to the Whatever Works Wellness Center, and he was so far advanced spiritually that he could literally read everyone's mind. And the owner was going through some problems, and he went up and just read all of the owner's thoughts. And the owner freaked, and then there was another co-owner, he went over there and read her mind completely. Why are you thinking this? And why are you feeling this? And it was almost like a total telepathic experience. And so both of them, the husband and the wife, the two owners, they just completely freaked. They said, get out of the shop. They were terrified. Come back on Tuesday night for David's Course in Miracles sessions. You don't need to be here now. And when he came to the Course in Miracles group, he sat down in our small circle, and he went around the room and he read every person's thoughts. You talk about privacy. He was just going around, and you're thinking this right now, and you're thinking this, and basically everybody in the course group got very uncomfortable and scared. And finally I said, well, this really is the core of where this is all heading. It's a course teaching us that we don't have private thoughts, and we don't have private minds, and we don't have to be so afraid that we're going to be found out, because the Spirit loves us. The Spirit knows our real self, and the Spirit knows what our real thoughts are, and that these are just ego thoughts. They aren't who we really are. It was a beautiful experience, and then he left the room, he went outside to his car, and he brought in a little scrapbook of him sitting out in the fields with like hundreds of butterflies all over his body. That's what all the people at the course group could relate to. They could, come here, let me give you a hug. A guy laying in the field with a bunch of butterflies on it. But the guy going around and reading everybody's thoughts, that's a little bit too close for comfort. So those are those discernment lessons that you're talking about, and there comes times where you may just say, I don't feel like I can talk about this right now, but I think I may be able to talk about it a little bit later, when I kind of have time to center and have some presence. Or maybe we both could go talk to so-and-so. Oftentimes people will say, let's go talk to David, because they know that there's a real sticky situation where there's a lot of, the feelings escalate very quickly, and they don't feel the stability to do it like in an interpersonal conversation, because they feel it could get into a war very, very quickly. So they take the presence and time to say, let's go talk with David, or maybe let's take a little time and come back to this. Or I don't think we're ready to deal with this alone. We need some kind of help, and let's go to a therapist, or let's go to somebody that's centered. And you're right, all of those are discernment lessons. Every single one of those is a lesson in discernment.
So this issue about private thoughts, all private thoughts, ego thoughts, and then once the illusory nature of that is recognized, then there are no private thoughts. Is that?
Yeah, basically, if you took it to the root, all thoughts about the past and all thoughts about the future are private thoughts. So we put it into a huge realm. You know, it could be, what's the weather going to be tomorrow? That's a private thought. Or a memory, that's a private thought. Initially, the Holy Spirit realizes that the mind that's asleep and dreaming is completely addicted to the belief in private thoughts and private minds. But the Holy Spirit uses guidance to reach that mind in a practical way. So you work more with the judgments, the grievances. You know, you work more at the subtle realms, or the realms where it's quite obvious that there's some pain and hurt involved. And then as you go much, much deeper, you get more to the nuances of, like Eckhart Tolle might be talking about, the power of now, coming back into that I am presence, that stillness.